Hi, and welcome everyone. It is so fantastic to have so many designers from all over the country tuning in for our live webinar session, talking all about Evolve, one of the most exciting, dynamic, and arguably one of the most rewarding competitions in the design landscape in Australia. So for those of you not familiar with Evolve, it started in 2010, born out of Designer Rug's desire to communicate to the design community the incredible power of color and that rugs can bring to a space, and show you the almost limitless possibilities of what you can create with them in partnership, and also give back to the community, celebrating the incredible talent that we have here in Australia. We're going to cover a lot of ground in our conversation today, and there are two key things that we want you at home and in the studio, I'm sure many of you are tuning in from your studios, to take away. An understanding of the process of designing a rug, and of course, how to enter, the important elements that you need to consider when you're putting your entry together. So we have three brilliant guests here with us today to talk about this process and the creative process, the technical process, and the fundamentals of rug design. We'll hear the highs and lows and the challenges of what it is like to bring a design from the screen or the page to life on the floor. First up, we have Leah Pielli.
Hi.
Hi, Leah. Leah is a senior designer at Designer Rugs with over 25 years of experience. She is one of the judges for Evolve 2025, but I would like to point out that all entries will be anonymous, so there will be no names associated with any of the entries, so don't worry about any bias or anything like that. The other key thing that Leah will bring to this conversation is communicating the details of what you need to consider and factor into your design process. Because designing with wool and the 8 colors that we have available to us has its challenges and its limitations, but that doesn't mean that you are restricted. So she will talk about that. We also have acclaimed modern Australian mastermind, leader of the next wave of Australian interior design, founder of House of Heras, Silvana Azzi Heras. Silvana is going to share her personal experiences of designing many collections with Designer Rugs over the years, and the nuances of translating her incredible 2-dimensional designs into 3-dimensional art for the floor. And last but not least, Gavin Harris. Gavin was one of the inaugural winners of Evolve back in 2010. He's been a past judge, and he is a much admired interior designer and industrial designer. With more than 20 years experience across Australia and Europe, Gavin has almost been there, done it all. So he will have some fantastic insights to share with us today. As design director of Construction by Design, Gavin is across every facet of the design kind of milieu, and everything that Gavin shares with us will be incredibly valuable, as everyone will. So I hope you've all got your pens and papers and are taking notes. And one last thing, we will have the live chat running. So if you see me looking down here, it's because I'm looking at the iPad trying to answer your questions. So fire them through. No question is a dumb question. More than happy to answer those as we go through our conversation. Chances are if you're thinking it and wondering it, someone else is too. And if there's anything that we don't cover, reach out to the Evolve team after this. They're more than happy to have conversations and help out any designer who has technical questions, creative questions, no matter what. Marketing at designerrugs.com.au. So, first question is for Leah.
Hi.
Hi, Leah. The Evolve competition, as we've touched on, is really special and quite unique. And it's, fantastic, because not only do we have 2 winners, under 30 and over 30, who take home $2,000 and get a trip to design Copenhagen, 3 days in design. It's also a very interesting space to operate in. Like, the rug world and translating design into rugs is quite technical. So what makes the competition so exciting from your perspective, aside from the prizes, of course?
I guess it's really exciting to design, just have an open brief and be able to be really creative take on your style into a space, rather than, be, I guess, constricted by a brief from your client. And it's also really interesting to see how the industry designers, interior designers, approach designing rugs as well, because they come with the same, design principles to the process. But it's that opportunity to really express yourself in the forms and colors and patterns that you would see in an, a an interior space. And it's taking all those, elements of whether it's, a commercial space or a residential space, like how do you bring that together to make it a beautiful space? So that's, to me, it's a really exciting opportunity to actually design, because I think a lot of our time gets caught up with, working with the admin side of things, but having that opportunity to really, really take it to another level and think about, working in a different medium too, because it's applying, your design ethos to a different surface, a different product, which is really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, that is exciting. And it's such an, as you say, to push the boundaries of your practice too. So my next question is for you, Gavin. You were one of the first designers to win Evolve
I was, yes.
back in 2010, which ended up being a tie. So, that can happen, just putting that out there to everyone. And then you went on to design a collection with designer rugs. You've done that multiple times. You've also been a judge. So you've experienced the full spectrum of competition entrant, winner, judge, as an independent designer. If you cast your mind back to that time that you entered, what motivated you to enter the competition?
What motivated me was I've always believed great things with competitions. I've always felt competitions, and I've always entered competitions even when I was in university. So I think there's a great chance to design things. And I think, like Leah was saying before, it's without a brief, or you create the brief, you create your own design brief. So what you can do is go have more freedom than rather say with a client's brief or, some other type of design process. So a competition gives you that freedom. It was a different material to play with too at that time when I was first kind of starting. Is it a graphic? Is it a physical form on a wall? Is it, is it texture? It's all those things. So it's a challenge to the mind. So that's what I was thinking of when I entered.
My next question is for Silvana. You're known for your creative direction and working with the incredible Catherine Martin and Baz Luhrmann on wonderful film sets, including Great Gatsby. We were talking earlier about how much of a fangirl I am of that work. So when it comes to designing a rug, given that you design across plates, textiles, wallpaper, all of these things that are typically upright, how do you approach the process of rug design? Is it any different from your normal design process?
It is very different. When I approach rug design, I always think of the very first thing I think of is scale. Like scale is really, really important. I guess my tip to everyone is kind of print out a small piece at 1:1 and put it on the floor.
Right.
So when you're designing, and it's all about the details. So there's a fine balance between having too much detail and not enough detail. I've just got a little sample here. I think this is as small as you should go with a rug. When it's too detailed, it gets too hard to you don't see the shapes. It's very confusing. So just to have clarity, the graphic nature of it. I know there's only 8 colors you can use in this competition. And color is huge as well. So I just think scale and color, work on that, and including some of the finer details. That's what I always try to do. And of course, I'm obsessed with symmetry, as you can see. And I'm always, I think pattern, scale, color is what I kind of focus on.
We can work without symmetry though too, right? Like that is a possibility. So Leah, I mean, I would love for you to jump in and talk a little bit about this.
I mean, inspiration can come from anywhere. And I guess a lot of our contemporary designs as well that we have in our showroom are abstract, asymmetrical. Like there's so many ways you can approach it too. Whether it's the geometry of forms like Gavin's, but also like traditional forms of designing too, like your William Morris, where it's based on nature or florals, and it's how you stylize those and bring that into a rug design, I think is, but scale is incredibly important because also there's limitations to how small you can go with detail in rugs. And I can talk more about that a bit later. But it's, thinking about how big things are as well. Like, does it look a bit novelty size once it's translated to a 2 by 3 meter rug? Whereas, it'll look quite small on the page in front of you. But it's, yeah, thinking about that scale once it's actually made to full scale, as you can see behind
And what
us.
is the full scale of the rug? So I know that we were chatting about that earlier. There's certain dimensions that we want our
Yeah.
evidence to be.
So for the competition, you have the choice of either a 2 by 3 meter rug. So basically the ones hanging behind us are there, or you can do a circle, which is a 2.5 meter diameter rug. So they're a good size or an ample size, which work quite well in front of a 3-seater couch, for instance, and also for displaying in our showrooms. But you always want to make a rug large enough that it fills a space, because if rugs are quite small, they're like a bit like a postage stamp or a doormat. So yeah.
Hey, Gavin, this is a question for you. We were talking earlier about, when we have, and I was describing the rugs as art for the floor. And yes, that is true. But as Gavin pointed out, when you take it off a wall and you're not seeing it as it's hanging behind us, there are other things interacting with that rug when it's on the floor. So this is, obvious to any interior designer, but there's ways to think about that from a design point of view that I'd love Gavin to share more about.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. In that, it is going to be, at an oblique angle. It's going to probably be in a space that does have a lounge or could have a dining table, all those kind of things over it. So when you design, and it comes back to scale, it's a very good point. That scale is, you'll probably see 80 to 90% of a rug. Does the story come across in that design when it's like that? And what does it look like in that, like perspective when you think about it? And then that texture that comes through it. So you need to think about the spaces, and this is going to be interesting for a competition because we don't know what the space is going to be. And you want to think about, as many spaces as this rug could sit in. How would it look in those spaces? Does it look good in the dining room? Would it look good in my lounge? What would it look like in a commercial corporate space? So have a think about that as well. So it's just not a design, drawing, painting, whatever exercise you want to call that when we're designing, but it is also, what is it going to live in? And the living part is going to help this rug come to life.
And I have another question for you, Gavin, and Gavin and Silvana. You've both done a number of collections with designer rugs and worked with Leah quite closely as part of that process. And we often think about design as being this insular and designer in the studio, creating this magical, incredible piece of work. But there's actually a big team involved. How has that experience been for you both?
You go for it.
Well, Leah and Yossi both know that I come presenting so many designs with so many color options. And what they do, they take it to the sales team, and then it comes back to me with what they think is going to sell. The most successful ones generally become the collection, and that's kind of how it goes from there. And then we start sampling.
So it is very, very collaborative.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
And I think that's something that, I guess, Leah, maybe you can speak to this just quickly. For those who are entering, you've put your heart and soul and a lot of time and effort and energy into creating this rug. But I believe that the final winners won't be chosen until it's actually made. Is that right?
Yeah, so there'll be the final selection. So 3 from each under 30s and over 30s. And then it's not until the rugs are actually made that we will actually have the judges come back into the space. It'll be an event night. And because the translation from that paper design or that digital design into a rug, there's a big transformation that happens there. And that's often why we do sampling before we actually produce a collection or a rug for a project. It's so you can understand how the colours have translated and the textures have translated. So in it'll be really exciting to see once they're actually translated into rugs, how that's actually, and especially to scale, how that presents itself for the judges. And so on the night, we will select the 2 winners, which will be really
That is
exciting.
great. So that is in March next year when we'll be having the big event for the big reveal with
Yep.
final judging.
That's right.
The other thing that I wanted to chat about is you've talked about layers and how the rug comes to life.
Mhm.
We can see in the rug, I'm not sure if people can see, but there's carving out and texture within that rug that is beyond just the pile itself. So, I mean, I think maybe this is a question for each of you to respond to, but technically and design-wise, what should people at home be thinking about?
Yeah, sure. So with hand tufted rugs, which is the process we'll be using to produce a rug, most of our rugs are a 9mm cut pile. In 100% New Zealand wool is where we start our base from. For this competition, you can also use highlights of shiny nylon. So that'll give you like the effect of silk, but at a more affordable price. That's generally why it's used more so. But you also have the opportunity to have different pile heights. So it can be 9mm up to about 11mm. And if we're using loop pile, which is how it sounds, it's literally looped over, that's usually at a lower pile height, about 7mm. So that can create lots of texture. And the rug behind me, behind us, is a good example of that. We can also use carving. So if it's all cut pile 9mm, especially with really clear graphic designs or geometric forms, carving comes in and it's literally like carving on wood. So it goes around the shapes and it really gives you a defined shape. But if you're wanting something that's more abstract, more organic, you wouldn't use carving because that'd make it look a bit staid and stiff. So the idea is depending on the design, how you would approach that. But yeah, so it really adds to the designs. Yeah.
Gavin, is that something you think about when you're designing a rug? Like, okay, is this going to be carved? I mean, you've done it before, right? So you
Yes,
have
yes.
that understanding.
Yeah.
But if you haven't done it before, how would you know whether to factor that in and
Yeah.
how to communicate that or think about that in your design?
The carving and the pile heights are actually the really interesting part. You know, you think of the design, the graphic of the shape and the colors and the forms. That's one part. But when you start getting that subtlety of, you know, that 3D element into a rug, you're thinking, well, what is going up? What is going down? And the very, you know, and what's that effect? You can even, you know, have it overlay a little bit. But so that I do that with the greatest thing, and it'd be worthwhile. You come to Design a Rug showroom and have a look at samples and actually have a look at what they do. Like I'm looking at a rug behind the camera at the moment with the light hitting it and how the shadows get formed because we have different pile heights. It creates another level of interest. So it's all there's little nuances which are very subtle but actually very powerful. And it sounds like you're going on about it, but it actually adds a lot to the rug. And the carving's a difficult one. It is a tricky one to work out the carving.
Yeah, I don't love carving. Sorry, don't.
That's all right.
I kind of feel like it takes away from the design. So carving isn't my thing. If you see my collections, I don't have carving, but I do have shiny details, which is the bamboo that I use to kind of accent, you know, little flowers, the center of flowers or the outline of the design. So this has got the gold kind of metallic bamboo outline.
Yes.
But yeah, but I've seen carving used beautifully. I just personally don't like to use it in my rugs. I feel like it takes away from the pattern.
Yeah. And I think that's the brilliant thing of working with designer rugs is that there's that trust and communication and it's very iterative. So there's not like designer rugs is going to come and be like, no, this is what we're doing with your design. This is how we're doing it. And it's not the case at all, is it?
No.
Yeah, and it's also like depending on the design, we'll sort of also guide our clients like whether, you know, you should add carving or you should have different pile heights. Once you've got a really all colorful design, say you're using all 8 colors and there's lots of detail, quite often doing different pile heights and carving won't actually add to the design. It's probably making it more complicated to produce, but it won't physically add to the design. Whereas when you've got something that's maybe more neutral, different pile heights and texture is actually going to really enhance the difference in the rug. So they're the kind of things we will always help guide our clients through the process, and our collaborators as well. We have those conversations too, like why don't we do this, or maybe we'll sample this. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think we are almost at time, and I'd love to just have a few moments to wrap things up and ask, and I guess say one final piece of advice that you would offer. I guess, well, I mean, you won when you first entered it, so you wouldn't need to give them any further advice. So pass, Gavin, because you nailed that. But what advice would you give to the people at home or in the studio to, I don't know, get over any fear or trepidation if they haven't done this before? And yeah, and where should they seek inspiration from?
Well,
Any place.
well, look, the inspiration is anywhere. I think the inspiration comes from, picking up if you want to draw or if you want to paint or you want to take photographs or any of those mediums. Just start that process and then let it go for a walk it for a little bit. There's no wrong in the design of a rug. It's really what you connect to, and then think beyond that, how other people may connect to that, or that space may connect, and how I talked about before, spaces and things like that. That is really that's there's nothing else to worry about. And as Leah said, Designer Rugs team, the design team, help you very much through the journey. They will talk about pile heights, they'll talk about the materials, talk about the color nuances. That is part of it, and that's the fun part of collaboration, because they bring something that you may not know about or you've never even thought about that actually makes that rug even better. And then it'll be sampled, and there's 6 up on the wall. Who's going to win? Look out.
I think I said it earlier. I really think you should print a part of it. Whatever, even if you have an A4 printer at home, you'll see it at 1:1 and you'll put it on the floor and you'll actually see, is that too big? Is that too small? Does it need more detail? Are those colors working together? So that was my kind of
Yeah, that's fantastic.
little tip.
And I have one last question, actually. I've just remembered that I really wanted to understand how has designing rugs, if at all, impacted your design process beyond rugs? Has it changed the way you design in general terms?
I normally do start with the rug design, which is quite interesting. But recently I've been doing wallpaper as well. So I've been hand painting. But when I do rug design, it's always more vector. So it's kind of graphic, it's in Illustrator. I start with a drawing and then take it into the computer. And then from there, it either gets turned into a wallpaper or a fabric print. So I do normally start with the rug design and then add detail and reduce the scale for fabric and wallpaper.
Interesting. So it really does have a lot of crossover translation to anything that a designer might put their hand to. So I guess stepping up to the challenge and entering this competition might push you in all of those directions too, right? And you, Gavin, same question.
Well, my style's a bit different. With rugs, I kind of do a lot of I just draw. I kind of just draw with felt pens and everything else. And then that develops, and not even the colors are right. And Leah's seen some of she's seen all the drawings I do. And so it's a form and shape and story maybe behind it, and it may not be the colors. And then so I look at that first, and then you disseminate that into, well, where should it go for the tone and the colors, maybe for the space. The spaces I design are commercial spaces and so forth, hospitality and so forth. So I weave them in as a secondary story rather than a primary story. So they have a different kind of balance. So it's just different styles of design and dominance. So in the space.
And I guess I don't want the entrants to get too caught up in the technical aspects of it, because I think what's really important is thinking about how, we're looking for amazing designs, and a point of difference, I think, is a really key thing too, because at Designer Rugs, we collaborate with lots of amazing designers, And it's really important for this competition that it's about like what's exciting, what's new, what like and different directions that designers come from. And thinking about that translation as well from paper to designs. Tufting rugs is like color by numbers is the best way I can describe it. It's literally a line drawing is drawn up onto the fabric and each shape is tufted separately. So when you're thinking about the design, like things like blurred colors and stuff like, gradients are quite hard to translate into a rug because you get a very stepped appearance in that process. And it's actually a very expensive process because you have to dye in between colors and things like that, which is not really being offered in this competition. So it's very much thinking about how colors and forms work and just thinking about that, like, it does get converted to a line drawing. So even if you're producing it as a hand rendered design, painting, drawing, collaging, you can approach it however you like. But we then will convert it to a line drawing basically for production. Yeah. So exciting.
It is very exciting. And I think too, the theme is the power of colour. But colour, as we were talking about in a panel discussion recently, it can be so much more than bright colour. It can be monochromatic colour and it can be texture. It's about a palette, isn't it? So I think that's something that we should ensure everyone understands and remembers too, that there's a palette to think about.
Yeah, most definitely. I was going to say back to what Leah was saying, really think about what is missing in the market. Like, what haven't you seen around? What can I contribute, with my unique vision? And that's when I go into a collection, I'm always thinking about that.
Yeah, incredible. Well, I do have one question here, which I will attend to now. Could the panel run through the technical guidelines in a little more detail? The line thickness, the shape dimensions and limitations. I think we have covered that, but we want to be a little bit more specific to that, Leah.
Yeah, sure. So, tufting rugs, there are limitations to, like I was saying earlier, the detail you can go down to. So, a line of tufting is about 5 mil thick. So, it's like drawing with a big, thick texture. So, if you've only got one line of tufting, it can look quite broken up. And if you're doing an organic or sort of design like that, where you want the line to be sketchy, that can be fine. But if you want the defined lines, especially like in that sample there, you want it to be about 1 centimeter thick. So that'll give you a nice defined line, and you can carve that line. Anything smaller than that, you can't carve it either because it just gets carved out basically. And shapes as well, if you're thinking about like triangles or squares or flowers, even, if you go too small, they start losing their integrity and looking like blobs rather than the actual forms. So you want to keep those shapes to about 4 centimeters diameter, say for like a square, a 4 by 4 square, or a triangle, just thinking about that as a rough estimation. And also thinking about the spaces in between because they can't get any smaller than a line of tufting either. So it's about the scale is quite often one of the more technical things. So you've got a limit of 8 colors. They can be stippled together to create more colors. That's a tricky way of extending your colors, but at the same time, the design team will help with the translation of the designs for the finalists. So don't get too caught up on that, but try to keep it to that 8 colors. And the different pile heights, as I was discussing earlier, so it's 9 mil cut pile is our standard because it's a good solid base to work from. It's industry sort of standard as well. And then you go lower for the loop pile, which would be about 7 mil. And then you can do different pile heights. So you could have 9, 11, maybe 13 mil, depending on the design, in different cut pile variations. So to give texture. And again, about 10% shiny nylon you can add to the design too if you want to have those shinier elements to the design. But you wouldn't make that the majority of your design. Yeah.
No, and I suppose to Gavin's point earlier about the sun coming in, you wouldn't want to blind everyone potentially.
Well, some people do like a lot of bling, but
We have a few more technical questions that have come in.
Yep.
So, how should the entrants communicate their desires around pile heights and, specifying this piece is nylon, this piece I'd like to be wool? How do they communicate that in their entry? Is there
So usually, yeah, when they put their color, like, so the color block, I think we've got a design block. I'm not entirely, I can't remember now. So it'll have 8 little squares underneath it. So for each color that you can use. So underneath those squares, you can say New Zealand wool, loop pile, cut pile. So indicating what each of those colors will be translated into. So the rug behind us, for instance, the charcoal color is 9mm cut pile. The white lines, I'm getting it around the wrong way. I think are at 11mm. And you can say with carving as well. So, and that's something, certain things can be carved and certain things can't be carved as well. So
with the entry, people can say, here's my design, this is a circle or it's the rectangle, and these are my specifications that I've
yeah, so it's just literally saying cut pile, loop pile, color 1, color 2. Yeah.
and this is very specific. Can they handwrite those details on the submission, or would you prefer it in a Word document, or
It'll be on the submission.
It'll be
So
on the
yeah, so there is a concept statement that they also will need to do, a maximum of 300 words, and just explaining, and that's an opportunity to talk about the concept behind the design and also how they want it to be produced can possibly go into that space as well. Yeah.
300 words is a lot. As a writer, you can
Keep it brief.
It's sappy, but it's fantastic you can add notes as well. That's
Yeah,
really good.
yeah.
Another question about the 8 colours. This is another one for you, Leah. Is it any 8 colours?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely. So at this point, we don't expect anyone to match to any color range. We have a color box that we work from that we've developed, but there's also Pantone colors, or it can be any color you like, and we will then match back to our designer rugs box. So that will be in the process. Once we've selected the finalists, that's the process designer rugs goes with through the process with that entrant, and yeah, it'll be exciting. Yeah.
But it's not custom colour, so you won't be creating a customised colour, a suite of 8 colours.
No. It's generally we find with through the process, yeah, and also it might be a slight adjustment of color too. So that's the other thing, because whatever you're producing, whether you're, producing fabrics or whatever, you're always limited to color ranges, just generally as nature. A lot of digital printing's changed that, obviously, but with most traditional processes, you're still limited to a color range. So in this case, we will try to match back. We've got a number of color boxes that we can work from as well, but we will generally try and match back to our color box because that's what we work from and what our suppliers work from as well. So
Yeah. I mean, to Gavin's point earlier, I think the best thing to do if you're having questions about any of these things, particularly around colour, and you want to sort of touch and feel and experience what the colour box is, come into the studio, come into the showroom and chat with the team. Like, they are the most incredibly friendly, helpful people. So I think that is a very good tip for everyone. People can still fire the questions through because I'm just going to cover off the final details. So remember, everyone, that there are 2 awards, an under 30 and an over 30, and there's finalists will be announced in February, I believe, with our March event revealing the winner. There'll be a winner who takes home $2,000 and the trip to Copenhagen, and there's also a runner-up who takes home $1,000. 2 runner-ups, sorry, under 30 and over 30. And what else can we share? If you have any questions that we haven't had a chance to cover today, please send them through via email to marketing@designerrugs.com.au, or pick up the phone, ask anyone in the showrooms. They will be more than happy to point you in the right direction. And of course, Googling Evolve 2025 will also bring you up the answer. Well, bring you to the place you need to go to find the answers if you can't. Entries are open now and they close on October 13th, which is a little over a month away. So don't do the typical thing that most of us designers do and leave it to the last minute, because there is a lot of complexity in this process. It's not something you can just whip up and hope it'll all come together. If you really do want to win, and it's an incredible prize, so why wouldn't you? Start thinking now. Start getting those creative ideas and inspirations flowing. What else? We've got one more question. Not 2 more, which I'll cover off. With colour, Do shades count as separate colours?
Yes.
Good. That was nice and easy.
Yes, they do.
Is there a limit to how many entries one person
They can, yes. So three entries per person. Yeah, and they can be completely different. They don't need to be under the same idea. They can be completely different 3 entries, which is exciting.
This is exciting. I mean, that really does give the designers an opportunity to really push the limits of their practice and be in completely different directions that they
Absolutely. Yep.
wouldn't normally do when you're doing it for a client. How do we incorporate stippling?
I would not focus on that too much. I think that will happen organically if it's required. I think that's something like, for instance, I'm just trying to think of an example quickly, but if you are wanting to create like a transition from one color to another or have that step in between 2 colors, that's when you would use stippling. So say, for instance, you had the charcoal and the pink behind me and you wanted a blush charcoal in between those, you could stipple those 2 colors to create. And here's a lovely example of how stippling works really beautifully. It just gives you, and it creates texture as well to a design, because some designs look amazing where it's all stippling rather than just being solid colors, and especially with your organic sort of abstract designs, it can work really beautifully. Yeah.
And this is another technical question relating to the entries. Can they be hand-drawn and painted and then digitally uploaded, or do they need to design a vector and submit vector file?
No, they can be absolutely hand-drawn and submitted as a hand-drawn file. Yeah, absolutely. Just thinking about, like I said earlier, blurred, using things like watercolors is very difficult to translate. So using an opaque medium is much better, like gouache or even oil paints, or if you're painting or if you're using textures, felt pens. Solid areas of color is what we try to focus on, because it's the way the product is produced is the reasoning for that. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I haven't had any more questions coming through, so thank you very much everyone for tuning in for the fantastic questions, and we wish you the best of luck, and an incredible thank you to our panel. Thank you for sharing your insights, your process and your creative journeys.